refusing all help except help from Allah.
In times of need, we tend to turn to people for help, knocking on the doors of our friends, neighbors, relatives, and anyone else that we expect help from. But we should turn to none of these or to any other created being for help. Rather, we should turn to Allah alone for help. When Ibrahim alayhi salam was about to be thrown into the fire, the angel Jibril came to him and asked if he needed anything. He answered, "From you, no, but from Allah, yes." And this is a supplication that each one of us should make. O Allah, suffice me with what is lawful, so I have no need for what is unlawful, and free me from having to depend on anyone other than you. Gathered around Al-Hasan ibn Sufyan were a number of students who had traveled from distant lands in order to learn from him. For the most part, they were affluent students who had the means to journey to various lands without the fear of poverty. Al-Hasan wanted to remind them that seeking knowledge is not an easy task, and that to become a scholar, one has to endure many hardships along the way. With his students paying close attention to him, he said, "Let me tell you about some of the hardships that I endured. Leaving my homeland, I made my way to Egypt in the company of 7 fellow students. We would all go to the study circle of the most knowledgeable and eminent scholar that was alive at that time. Every night, he would dictate notes to us. But as time went on, we began to run out of money, until finally, we had to sell the little furniture we had. Then, when our situation became critical, we ran out of money, food, and drink. We then spent 3 long, hungry days. So malnourished and weak did we become that it became difficult for us to get up and walk about. The obvious thing to do was to go out and beg, but we were certain that we did not want to ask any human being for help. Our situation then worsened, and so at least one of us had to go out and beg for money. To choose who it was that had to go, we drew straws. Having drawn the shortest straw, I was the one who had to go. Instead of leaving right away, I first prayed 2 units of prayer and invoked Allah for help. No sooner did I finish my supplications than a young man entered and said, "Who among you is Al-Hasan ibn Sufyan?" "Me," I answered. He said, "The ruler, Tulun, extends greetings of peace to you, and he apologizes for having been heedless and not coming earlier to check up on your well-being. Not being able to visit you until tomorrow, he sent me with this." He then gave each one of us 100 dinars. We, of course, did not personally know the ruler, and considering ourselves to be of little importance, we had no idea why he would give us money. We asked him to inform us about the story behind him being sent to us. He said, "As was my custom, I entered the chambers of the ruler this morning to ask him if he needed anything. The first thing I noticed when I entered was that he had his hands on his sides, and from his expression, it was clear that he was in a great deal of pain. He then asked me if I knew Al-Hasan ibn Sufyan. After I said no, he told me to come here and give each one of you 100 dinars. And then, in the following words, he explained to me why he wanted to help you. Upon falling asleep last night, I saw a rider in the sky with a spear in his hand. He descended to the door of this house and he then poked me in my waist with the bottom of his spear. He told me to go to Al-Hasan ibn Sufyan and his companions, informing me that they had been hungry for 3 days. I asked him who he was. He told me that he was Ridwan, caretaker of paradise. From the time he poked me with a spear, I have continued to feel a great deal of pain in my waist. Go quickly and give them this money, for until it reaches them, I fear that I will continue to feel this pain. Amazed by what had happened, we praised and thanked Allah. Al-Hasan said to his students, on that very night, we left Egypt, fearing that if we were to stay, news of our story would spread and we would then become famous. By the blessings and grace of Allah, each one of us ended up becoming a preeminent scholar in his own right. Here was a group of students who had all of the necessary ingredients for their supplications to be answered. They were sincere. They refused to procure sustenance through unlawful means, and they turned only to Allah for help. Thus, His help came to them in the most unexpected of ways.
And whoever fears Allah and keeps his duty to Him, He will make a way for him to get out from every difficulty. And He will provide him from sources he could never imagine. And whosoever puts his trust in Allah, then He will suffice him. And whosoever fears Allah and keeps his duty to Him, He will make his matter easy for him. How perfect Allah is.
A ruler from centuries ago, Sultan Suqayla, was an easy sleeper, but one night he couldn't fall asleep. As the minutes passed by during that night, he tossed and turned, trying as hard as he could to fall asleep. Finally, frustrated after numerous failed attempts, he decided that since he was awake anyways, he would get up and take care of some of his country's business. He summoned for the general of his small naval fleet to come to him. And when he came, Suqayla said, "Send one of our ships to Africa and tell the captain of the ship to bring back news of what is happening there." Still, not being able to fall asleep, Suqayla made his way to the docks later on that night. Much to his chagrin, he saw that all of his ships were still docked at the harbor. He angrily went to his general and said, "Why didn't you carry out the orders I gave you?" "In fact, I did carry out your orders," said the general. "I sent a ship and it set sail. But 1 hour after it had departed, it returned. But let us go to the captain of the ship so that he can give you a first-hand account of what happened." When they reached the captain, he began to give an account of what had taken place. "We set sail, and though we couldn't see anything because of the darkness of the night, we heard a man's voice calling out, 'O Allah! O Allah! O one who helps those who call out to you for help.' We changed course and followed the sound of his voice. And as we drew nearer, we yelled out, 'We are coming to you!' Finally, when we reached him, we were able to see that he was drowning. We then quickly pulled him up to safety. He later told us that his ship had sunk and that for more than a day he was calling out for help, until we finally came and saved him. How perfect is Allah, who made the Sultan go sleepless in his castle, so that a man could be saved from 3 kinds of darkness: the darkness of the night, the darkness of the sea, and the darkness of loneliness. How perfect Allah is indeed, and none has the right to be worshipped but Allah.
Ease after hardship.
While in Baghdad, Abu Dhar would spend much of his time learning from his sheikh, Omar ibn Ahmed. The former was once reading hadith narrations back to the latter, while both were seated in a perfume store, when a man who appeared to be an itinerant perfume salesman passed by. Not having a store of their own, such salesmen would buy perfume from the owner of the store that the sheikh and student were seated in, and then walk around the marketplace trying to sell what they bought for profit. Unlike other itinerant salesmen, who were strong and hardy, this man was middle-aged and weak. He offered it for 10 dirhams to the owner of the store and said, "Give me such and such amount of such and such perfume." When the transaction was completed, he walked away with a tray full of perfume bottles. But he only took a few steps before he stumbled and all of the bottles fell to the ground, with most of them breaking. He then began to cry, and thus drew the attention of Sheikh Omar ibn Ahmed and his student Abu Dhar, both of whom had been busily occupied studying together at the back of the store. Seeing what had taken place, the sheikh felt sorry for the man. Turning to the owner of the store, he said, "Perhaps you can help him out a little." The owner of the store had a great deal of respect for the sheikh, and so he stepped down into the street, helped pick up the bottles that were still intact, and then paid for the ones that had broken. Wanting to comfort the salesman, the sheikh went to him and said, "Do not lose your nerves, for worldly things are not deserving of your grief." "Sheikh, simply losing these things is not what brought about my grief," said the man. "Allah indeed knows that I was with such and such caravan, and that during our voyage I lost a bag which contained 4,000 dirhams and some precious stones, which were equivalent in value to the money. Shortly thereafter, my wife gave birth to a baby boy, and she needed money for her upkeep and for the upkeep of our child. All the money I had left was 10 dirhams, and I feared that if I gave her my remaining money, I would have no more capital with which I could do business. And I have become an old man who cannot easily find work. Thus the idea came to me that I should buy some perfume with my remaining money and then try to sell it for profit, so that with the proceeds I could give my family what they needed and still have money left over with which I could do business. That is how I wound up at this store. When the bottles broke, I feared that I would have to run away from my family, whom I could no longer support, and that is what caused me grief." As all of this was taking place, a soldier was seated nearby, and he heard what everyone had said. After hearing the old man's story, the soldier turned to the sheikh and said, "Noble sheikh, I impress upon you the need of bringing this man with you to my home." Everyone there thought that he either didn't trust the old man and wanted to punish him, or felt sorry for him and wanted to help him out. He spoke in a respectful yet authoritative tone, and so instead of questioning his motives, they all simply followed him to his home. After they entered, the soldier turned to the old man and said, "Were you really with such and such caravan?" The old man said, "Yes, traveling with it were such and such people." Still, not fully satisfied, the soldier asked, "Describe the bag that you were carrying, and where did it fall?" After the old man gave a minute and detailed description of the bag, the soldier asked, And if you see it, will you recognize it?" "Of course," said the old man. The soldier then took out a bag and placed it before the old man, who immediately, upon seeing it, yelled out joyfully, "Indeed, this is my bag." And to leave no room for doubts as to his veracity, he then proceeded to give a detailed description of the precious stones that were inside the bag. Now certain that he was being truthful, the soldier said, "Take your money and stones. May Allah bless you with them." The old man said, "Leave me the money and take the precious stones for yourself, for indeed they are equivalent in value to the money. Please don't refuse, for I give it to you with an open heart and without any resentment." The soldier answered, "I cannot comply, for it is not befitting for me to take money in return for having fulfilled a duty that was incumbent upon me to fulfill." He gave everything to the old man, who then departed, leaving rich after having entered poor. How perfect indeed Allah is, who provides relief for those in need.
So verily, with the hardship there is relief. Verily, with the hardship there is relief. Meaning, there is one hardship with two reliefs, so one hardship cannot overcome two reliefs. Whatever hardship you are afflicted with is a result of what your own hands have reaped.
Many people, and not just non-Muslims, become resentful when they or someone they love is afflicted with a calamity. To be sure, many people around the world are afflicted with difficult hardships and trials. Upon contemplating the situation of many among them, I asked myself, how perfect Allah is. Indeed, He is the most generous of all, and generosity necessitates forgiveness. Then why is it that so many people are being punished? It did not take long for me to find the answer to that question, for I came to the realization that most people lead worthless lives. They do not contemplate the numerous signs that point to the oneness of Allah. They care not about Allah's commands and prohibitions. Instead, they live as beasts do, caring for nothing except for food, drink, pleasure, and sleep. And here I am, not referring only to non-Muslims, for there are many Muslims who apply the teachings of Islam only when doing so is easy or in agreement with their desires. Otherwise, they blindly follow their lusts, caring not about how they earn their wealth, whether it is from lawful or unlawful sources. If it is easy for them to pray, they will pray. Otherwise, they will often forsake compulsory prayers. Others among them perpetrate grave sins, without afterwards feeling any remorse or guilt. Thus I came to know that for many people, the punishments, trials, and afflictions that befall them, however great they may be, are less severe than the severity of their sins. Upon suffering a calamity, one might call out, "Why did this happen to me?" Yet he forgets the many sins he perpetrated throughout his life. And in his old age, a man might suffer a great deal of humiliation, to the degree that by just looking at him, people pity him. Yet perhaps they do not know that he is being punished for not having fulfilled Allah's rights during his youth. So whenever you see one who is being punished, know that it is because of his sins.
What is the matter with you when a single disaster smites you? Although you smote your enemies with one twice as great, you say, "From where does this come to us?" Say to them, "It is from yourselves because of your evil deeds. and Allah has power over all things.
And this brings us to the point.
The good life is achieved through the performance of good deeds.
Whoever wants the good life, sufficient provision, peace of mind, health, etc., should strive to do good deeds, performing them only for Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said,
If they, non-Muslims, had believed in Allah and went on the right way, meaning Islam, we should surely have bestowed on them water, meaning rain, in abundance.
In a Qudsi hadith, the Prophet ﷺ related that Allah said, Had my slaves obeyed me, I would have provided them with rain during the night, caused the sun to rise upon them during the day, and I would not have made them listen to the sound of thunder. Abu Sulaiman ad-Darani, one of the most eminent of scholars during his time, said, Whoever makes pure his intentions and deeds, then his life is made pure and good for him. Whoever does the opposite, then his life is made bitter and spoiled for him. Whoever does good deeds in the night is provided for during the day, and whoever does good deeds during the day is provided for during the night. It is related about a sheikh that he would go from one gathering to another, stopping at each gathering only to make this announcement: Whomsoever it pleases to remain in a state of safety, health, and prosperity, then let him fear Allah. Al-Fudayl ibn Iyad, a well-known scholar of the 1st century, said, Whenever I disobey Allah, I perceive the effects of that sin in the treatment I receive from my riding animal and my female servant. Whenever you are going through a difficult situation in life, try to remember some blessing for which you were not thankful, or some sin from which you have not repented. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said,
Verily, Allah will not change the good condition of a people, as long as they do not change their state of goodness themselves. None has the right to be worshipped but you, O Allah. Glorified and exalted be you. Truly, I have been of the wrongdoers. So we answered his call and delivered him from the distress, and thus we do deliver the believers. And they said, Allah alone is sufficient for us, and He is the best disposer of affairs. So they returned with grace and bounty from Allah. No harm touched them. And my affair, I leave it to Allah. So Allah saved him from the evils that they plotted against him. That which Allah wills will come to pass. There is no power but with Allah. It was better for you to say when you entered your garden, That which Allah wills will come to pass. There is no power but with Allah. The answer to your supplications is delayed for a reason.
There is an interesting situation that confuses many. The believer who is afflicted with a calamity and who then invokes Allah constantly, yet sees no sign of an answer to his prayers. Then, when he comes near to the point of hopelessness, the true worth of his heart is found out. If he is pleased with what Allah decreed for him, without losing hope of Allah's favor, then, in most situations, it is at that point that such a person's supplications are answered because his test is over. His faith has shined through, and the devil has been defeated. So, it is at the time of near hopelessness that the worth of man is judged. This meaning is alluded to in the saying of Allah,
Or think you that you will enter paradise without such trials as came to those who passed away before you? They were afflicted with severe poverty and ailments, and were so shaken that even the messenger and those who believed along with him said, When will come the help of Allah? Yes, certainly the help of Allah is near.
After Yaqub alayhi salam lost his son, much time elapsed, yet he never lost hope of relief. Instead of relief, another of his sons was taken away. And even then, he did not lose hope of Allah's favor and mercy.
So patience is most fitting for me. It may be that Allah will bring them all back to me. Truly He, only He is all-knowing, all-wise.
And similar were the words and sentiments of Zechariah.
And I have never been unblessed in my invocation to you, O my Lord.
Never, therefore, should one feel that too much time has passed by without his supplications being answered. One should realize that whenever one is tested with hardship, one's mettle and faith are being tested. To pass such a test, one must drive away the whispers of the devil and then turn for help to the most merciful, the most generous, the most wise.